Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing okay under trying times for us all. I just wanted to thank everybody for their support. I got official confirmation that the channel is blacklisted, so therefore the videos do not show up on any search engines. So notifications are getting turned off. So it's gonna be impossible to grow a channel on YouTube by providing facts, data, and really logical conclusions. Today we're revisiting the solar system because it does pertain to what's happening today, even if you don't think so. And that's okay, because right now what's happening around you is the most important pivotal time in the history of modern civilizations. But unprecedented times on Earth was brought about by unprecedented things in the solar system in terms of modern man. These cycles that take thousands of years take several generations of humans just to repeat one cycle. The sun is white hot. The sun is very hot. I was on a cool deck. Excuse me. I was on a porch deck, a redwood deck yesterday, and it was not even noon yet. And we're in April, and it was so hot I couldn't stand on it with my bare feet. It reminded me of the flagstone in the summer, in June. Yet this is redwood deck in April. Something is up. We passed through an alignment with the brown dwarf. We have seen now in the last 3 alignments a softening of the earthquake magnitudes and numbers. We can't get a good large body pattern. We look at the magnetosphere and we use it, the direction, the wind direction, and the wind behavior off the sun as kind of a windsock, because if a second source of particles shows up, it affects the direction in which the wind is supposed to be traveling off the sun. And there's no doubt that the climate extremes are happening. The confusion and the distraction of the carbon dioxide narrative is a huge distraction as to that white hot sun. And all of these pictures of this white sun, almost all of them are taken with a red filter, yellow filter, orange filter, and still the sun is appearing white. And it's just incredible. And the amount of cosmic rays in the solar system, this is public record now, is 10 times higher than we've ever seen. So what would that do to your solar system? It would surely change your solar system. And the temperature of those particles is extremely irrelevant. Large body alignments, however, they do affect our super calderas. And yes, Long Valley and Mono Valley, and even the caldera just west of the Salton Sea. They're all subsiding together. Yellowstone too. But these are by far more recorded earthquakes over here, guys, on the border. Mono Valley is an old caldera. I think it's an old super caldera. And on the western flank, we have new, lava flows called the Sierra Nevadas. But yet, Mono Valley suddenly got really active. And hundreds of quakes. None of them, very few of them are shallower than 2 kilometers in depth. So we're not calling an eruption on this one. West of the Salton Sea itself is a caldera. And, what you have to understand, the entire Great Basin is a super mega caldera. So you're gonna have these subsidence zones, these hot spots, these volcanic chambers subsiding all along the edge of the Great Basin. on the other edge of the Great Basin, there's let's see, Yellowstone, La Garita crater. Those are super volcanoes as well. New Mexico has a couple, Colorado. So, we're used to seeing super calderas on the edge of super mega calderas. And that's the new normal. We did not know that. And this channel was really one of the first channels to call out the Great Basin as a super mega caldera. So, but yet, so with the subsidence zones are responding to large body alignments, the tectonic plates are not, and that's probably has more to do with the speed and the angle that we are positioned to this brown dwarf fragment. It's not a full-size brown dwarf. We probably wouldn't be here right now if that were the case. So, but there's been an absence of protons now. It keeps going on 4 years now, 5 years. Where have all the protons gone? We go to ACE, even in the absence of protons, get spikes. Generally, those are alpha particles. And so, but not CMEs with high energy, and not coronal holes, and we're not seeing the ionized particles like there should be in coronal holes. We see the temperature is below average, the speed is slightly above average. The known focusing cone, they reported the highest speed of the helium is 450 kilometers a second. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing some high-speed particles with low energy. What does that sound like? Is it really low energy? Well, let's go to a simulation to see, because this one does measure energy. You see that there in joules is an energy measurement. You see off to the right where the sun is, there's no energy being created. But yet in the tailstream there is. So Earth has its own focusing cone. And some of these particles try to wrap around, and it creates a concentration of particles. When there are electrons, it looks like this. And so we're seeing periods, we're still seeing fluxes of electrons, lower energy electron, and congregating there at the focusing cone too, and being trapped in and being held in at the equatorial regions of the Earth until such time where there's so many electrons that they repel one another like a cannon exploding almost into the tailstream. But all of this disturbance that we're seeing, you haven't seen them yet, I'm about to show you, but I want to orient you that there's no coronal holes. There's no active regions to account for anything. So you would expect to see low energy in the bow shock zone of Earth. You would not expect to see those high energy yields in all of the background radiation of our magnetic fields that we are so accustomed to from the electron population. But, I'm just showing you the sun to underscore the fact that we should not be having disturbances in the absence of energy in our magnetosphere. But yet, when we go to this simulation, it's constantly disturbed. Those blue vertical lines that are breaking off in the tailstream, they're going in the wrong direction almost always. And there's almost always a disturbance, not originating in front of the Earth, but originating right where the focusing cones meet for some of these particles. When that happens, you get looping and disturbances. You have a general downstream flow that's being interrupted by high density, focused, accelerated neutral helium. The reason we know it's neutral is because of the lack of energy we're seeing so much now and we're not used to seeing very often. So we're coming into higher densities, very, very little radiation coming from them, and that, my friends, equals neutral helium and partially ionized helium. But my goodness, the densities are significant that we set off this spiral motion, sometimes set off by the disturbances, are breathtaking. They are breathtaking. And the open field lines get wrapped, become closed field lines. That's what the red means. And they're no longer open black field lines. And the swirling is incredible. So what we're seeing is incredible particle interaction and particle disturbances in the tailstream. We're seeing significant densities, and we know it's helium because the protons are gone. So what else could it be? But yet we're seeing a complete loss or lack of energy, which is a really strong indicator. You're looking at helium-3, helium-4 washing into our magnetosphere at this time. So it looks like we did pass in an alignment with the sun and this brown dwarf. And now that we are exiting the main focusing cone, we went from ionized to neutral to ionized and back to neutral again as we pass through this focusing cone. And it's not my theory. It's been reported on. The diagrams exist showing you the actual helium focusing cone, which we have just passed through. But what we're seeing is incredible disturbances, and they originate. Where they start, they're not originating in front of the Earth. They're originating back where the focused streams of helium intersect in the tailstream, creating massive, massive disturbances in the absence of energy. But we are getting very high, and moderate readings on the particle counts on this simulation in the absence of coronal holes and coronal mass ejections. And the electrons are pulsing in. They do pulse in, and from time to time they fill up our electron belts until partially ionized helium washes through and cleans out the belts, or until these electrons build up to a point where they eject themselves into the tailstream. But this is a really good indication. We see the only energy we see in this magnetosphere is in the tailstream. And why is that being created not in the bow shock zone, but in the actual downstream portion of our focusing cone? And that's because you're having a focusing effect on both the electrons and the helium. Now, we've been following the magnetosphere not as closely as other things, but the magnetosphere does kind of tell you what's going on. The BY component hardly ever talked about in astronomy because it's not related or does not cause geomagnetic storms. Well, at least it didn't used to. And so when you have the Earth establishing a magnetic connection in the BY component, that's usually to something out in the solar system, a planet usually, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. When we get an electrical field disturbance in the BY, it usually does not affect the rest of the magnetosphere, but that's been changing. Now the black line is the actual magnetosphere created by the spin of the Earth. And so what is happening here is you see right before your eyes the BY component, nothing to do with the sun, so to speak, is affecting the BZ component, which is our own generated magnetic field. The BX component, the blue line, is the magnetic field of the sun connecting to the Earth, and we see that they're slightly offset as we began to approach the focusing cone. The magnetosphere fluxes, the peaks and valleys, are slightly offset. As we entered into more of an alignment, the offset nature shifted a little bit. The BX component, the magnetic field of the sun Earth connection, suddenly spiked up to 100 nanoteslas, where it had been hovering in between the 50s, the minus 50 and the plus 50. So what would all of a sudden take our BX component and charge it up? What would happen? Well, it looks like the electrons from the brown dwarf, which is behind the sun right now, slightly 30 degrees over the North Pole of the sun, and we're seeing the electrons being incorporated into the solar wind. And so when you have more electrons in your solar wind, you have more nanoteslas. You have a stronger magnetic field. That's what's happening. Notice the BX component is kind of jagged too. And that's an indication of mixing and turbulence with respect to the electrons. The reason we're talking electrons is because this is a magnetic field, and that's what creates the magnetic field, is the flow of electrons. And we all know the sun is brighter. We know it very well. And very few people think the sun is cooler and dimmer. But all you have to do is look at the sun with a white light telescope. Look at that disk of white around the sun. It literally expands outward. And the entire corona doesn't always glow. And sometimes the disk around the sun shrinks a little bit. But that's created by the electrons and the helium interacting in the focusing cone. And look at the external part of the corona, not just the dense white, but just the periphery. You can see is lighting up. The further out you get from the sun, it doesn't dim. And when we get downstream in the focusing cone, the white light picks up all kinds of white light anomalies on this instrument, and that's what we're seeing again. So this brown dwarf has created and put us at the precipice of an extinction. And it's these cosmic rays that are lighting up the corona of the sun. But also, these cosmic rays directly impact Earth as well, not just through the corona of the sun, because the Earth has to pass through that focusing cone and through these cosmic rays, and they are being measured. But the collisions of these particles, these high-speed alpha particles, which are helium that are devoid of their electrons, so they're radioactive, and the amount of radioactivity coming from the sky has gone from 5% up to 18% in just the last 10 years. That's how much more radiation is coming, 13% more radiation coming from the sky. You can see and so when the neutrons can't even return to normal and are now showing record numbers, you would expect a record amount of radiation to be measured from the sky. But when these alpha particles are accelerated to 450 kilometers a second, and they collide with other things traveling at ridiculous speeds, you're going to release these high energy secondary cosmic rays, high energy secondary particles. And that's what we're seeing. All of it is being recorded and documented today, all of which we've just talked about. The increased cosmic rays, the increased radiation coming from the sky. So this has put Earth on the precipice of an extinction. The ocean, especially the Pacific Ocean, it seems like 70% of those animals associated with the Pacific Ocean are dead. And you can't keep having population growth in amongst and the midst of a food decline. Less food, more people at the same time is a double whammy on the food availability. So the fact that this stuff is happening with the coronavirus, with a synthetic manufactured virus, should tell you that somebody way up high is making a huge move. Big things are happening. Huge things. Unprecedented things. And it all started with the stressors created by all these cosmic rays